Welcome, friends. Welcome to today's Reconsider It live stream. Best live stream you're going to see all day. And here on this live stream, you are getting a very nice discussion stream, discussion variety. Instead of doing some music, my live looping and rapping that I ordinarily do, we're doing some discussions today, per your request. It's going to be a fun, illuminating discussion around topics related to communication and influence, picking up where we've left off in previous discussion streams. But even beyond just communication and influence starter topics, like we did previously, we're continuing on this time, and as the title of the video suggests, talking about the concept of shelf space in your mind and what that means for your mental health. Also, the social media element, the other half of the title of this video. How is social media as this new phenomenon in the history of humanity, how is that relevant for our topic here of influence and shelf space and communication and such? I see right now, Viral is with us. Yes. That's good. I like that. Here in this stream, this discussion, you're going to get not only these topics, just like, oh, let's talk about these topics, but you'll also get some actionable tips that you can practice, experiment with. Do these fit you like a glove? You can play around and see how these work for you. I see George G's is with us too. Yes, that's good. That was really good. So this is good. You're going to get a lot here in this stream on these topics of communication and influence. I'm going to do a recap of the previous streams so that you can recall that, and also you can know that if you haven't seen those. So we'll do a recap of the previous streams, what we were talking about, what are we going to be building upon, and then after those topics of communication and influence, we're going to be going on to the new topics for today: shelf space in your mind and what that means for you and how you can use it, or how can you use that to your advantage. And then also we'll begin discussion around social media as well. What a fun, exciting stream this is going to be. Let's get into it. So previous streams, the topics of communication and then influence we talked about. What did we talk about briefly? Let me recap for you. Oh, by the way, you may hear in the background, I have one of my live streams. This is my music that you may hear. It's light music in the background, but it's one of my unspoken streams, episode 1 from June 11th, 2025. Very good, very good. As we get into these topics, by the way, I do have a few talking points that I've prepared. And as I say, that's going to start with a recap of the previous streams. But even though I do have some talking points and I'm going to kind of dance around those a bit, this is meant to be a discussion more than a lecture. So I do have these like skeleton of an outline that I'm going to be going through, and I encourage you, if you're here with us live, I encourage you to let us know in the chat whatever is your, sincere contribution or thought you have that you want to share, or follow up you have, or something you want to ask. Put that in the chat. This is meant to be more of a back and forth than a one-way lecture. Also, if you're joining us after the stream, you're watching on replay, let us know in the comments. Which parts of this do you have some kind of follow-up on? Maybe you have some kind of story of your own that you say, oh yeah, what about this? And you want to add that in. Everybody benefits from you adding your contribution. I'm going to keep us mostly on topic, but do feel free to put your thoughts in the live chat and or the comments afterward. I see John is with us. That's good. That's good. We got John into place as well. Some of you already know about me in this capacity. I'm sitting here doing a live stream with you about communication and influence and all this. Some of you already know that I have experience with these topics professionally, that I am an educator, over 25 years of being an educator in various capacities. And for the past however many, like 15, let's say about 15-ish years, I have been including this stuff, the things I'm giving you in terms of communication and influence, the foundations I'm giving you, which I'm still going to recap presently. I have been giving you, or I will be giving you, I've been doing this stuff for, like I say, let's say 10 to 15, it's probably like 13 or 14 or something, that I've been specializing in these topics. So I even teach other educators. So I'm a trainer of trainers. I actually lead a program on all this stuff. I've written a lot of materials on this. You can have a lot of confidence in the stuff that I'm going to be sharing with you. This is not just things that I'm like, oh, let me just wonder, let me muse. There will be some of that too, but for the main backbone of the content I'm giving you, this is real stuff. This is really going to benefit you if you find your way to implement it in a way that naturally works for you. These are tried and true. I've trained thousands of people. I've coached with this stuff. I've coached hundreds of people. So that's some background on me. Some of you already know that, but for those who are with us for the first time, or maybe you didn't even know that about, maybe you know me, but you didn't know that about me. Hey, welcome. That's why I'm talking about this stuff. So I see also that Warheart has joined us. Hooray! Let's give a big howdy to Warheart. Apollo Hanzo in the place. Yes. Yes. This is good. That's good. I like it. All right. So as I say, there were a couple of previous streams. This is the third discussion stream, which, by the way, you can see if you look in the title of the video, it says D03. That's meant to be abbreviation for discussion 3. And I put the O, or the 0 rather, it's a 0, D03. I put the 0 because I plan to continue these streams. My regulars know this is a kind of a relatively new experiment. It's only the third episode. This is a new experiment to do just talking, but not to be playing music. Normally I'm doing my loopers and the synth, and that's what's playing in the background. My unspoken stream, episode 1 from June 11th, 2025. That's the background music you're hearing. I'm formally stating that for copyright reasons. And also telling you, in case you want to follow up, because in the video description there's a link to this if you want to listen to the instrumental that's playing. Also join us for unspoken streams, they're fun. Anyway, back to this stream here that we're talking about. I see Warheart says he's still at work. That's cool. Warheart also says he could tell there was something about me that sort of glowed this kind of credibility. And I would say, yes. You noticed that, did you? Nice. Cool. All right, my friends. So we are with it. Let's get in it. I promised you that we would start this stream with a bit of a recap. So I'll spend a few minutes on that. I'll recap the main talking points. Like if you ask your favorite AI to summarize the past 2 streams, and you're like, oh, and by the way, make it into just a few minutes of summary. AI would give you what I'm about to do right now, whatever that is. And just like AI doesn't have it planned out and is doing it literally token by token, I too am going to just kind of go through a vague recollection of what we did that I have bullet points here. And as a reminder, once again, this stream and these streams of mine, these discussion streams, these non-music playing, these discussion streams, these are meant to be a discussion, not a lecture. So I encourage you to add your thoughts, your follow-ups in the chat if you're here with us live, in the comments if you're joining us after the stream. I won't always follow up with every single solitary one, especially as we get many coming through the chat. All True in the place as well. That's good. All True says, I'm going to a show by Beatbox Jake. That's awesome. That's dope. Beatbox Jake was another performer at the show I played where All True first saw me. All True saw me play live in the... Oh, that's St. Paul, right? It's in the Twin Cities. I believe it's St. Paul. All True saw me play in a show at St. Paul, and Beatbox Jake was there. If you don't know Beatbox Jake, he is great to see live. I think he's at, what is he out of, Michigan? Is he at Grand Rapids? Or Ann Arbor? I'm not sure. But you can find Beatbox Jake. And he does beatboxing and plays electric guitar. So he's doing like wailing on all this dope, guitar solos and everything. It's really, and he has a looper too, by the way. So it's really good. It's a good show if you get to see him. Grand Rapids, All True says. Thank you. All right, friends, let's get into it. I said let's get into it at least one time before this, and we're getting into it presently. Please like this video. So in the previous streams, you asked your favorite AI to give you the couple-minute summary. What's it going to give you from the last 2 streams? It would give you something vaguely like this. It would say that the foundation of what I am talking about from like a framing perspective, like a theoretical framework perspective, it's built upon the idea of drivers as a metaphor for communication between humans, that is. So what are drivers? If you have a background in computer engineering, this is a straightforward metaphor for you. You say, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. If you're not familiar with what drivers are in a computer engineering sense, literally for your computer, your laptop, or your, I don't know, whatever, a mouse, a keyboard, you have some kind of like video game controller, some kind of, you hooking up your mixer, your audio mixer, for all my audio friends, whatever it is, you have some kind of device that you're interfacing with your computer, a piece of hardware that has to interface with another piece of hardware. That's the situation we're talking about from a computer engineering perspective. And so there's this problem where if you have, let's say, a keyboard, that is to say a letters, type on it keyboard, not a music keyboard. But you got a keyboard and you want to be able to type, your name. Hello, I'm John Smith. You want to type that on the keyboard. Well, ultimately, that every time you press one of these buttons, like John Smith, J, you press that, O, every time you press a button, it is sending a signal, electrical signal, to whatever CPU is processing those signals. It's sending some kind of electrical signal that is a combination of ones and zeros. So it's like 101110, well, whatever it is. That's J. But then when you press O for your name, John, then it has to send a different set of ones and zeros. And then you get to the next letter in John, and that sends an even different set of ones and zeros. So now the problem is, how is the receiving device, the CPU in this case, how is the receiving device supposed to know, oh, that ones and zeros, what does that mean? And you might say, why doesn't the receiving device just automatically know that? The answer is, well, you want to allow for innovations in keyboards. And different keyboards might have different sets of ones and zeros that they send. Oh, this one has a new set of buttons over here, and so it has to have a totally different set of ones and zeros in order to accommodate everything. So in order to allow the flexibility of different devices, that's what this is about, the flexibility of different devices, there needs to be some way of like a plug and play type of functionality. That way you can take a different keyboard and plug it in and it'll work. You'd be like, oh man, that's nice. I got my other keyboard. And so the receiving piece of hardware cannot be coded with all, like, the infinite list of all possible keyboards, including ones that have never been invented yet. Therefore, there needs to be some kind of like transmittable means of deciphering what the ones and zeros mean. So that when you plug in the keyboard, and the keyboard now you say, all right, J, bam. The keyboard, by virtue of plugging it in, maybe delivers a driver that has the means of decoding what those ones and zeros are. The driver then is that means of decoding. And this is what my discussion around communication is based upon. So that's your first point of review from the previous streams. That there's this concept in computer engineering of needing to have a piece of software called a driver that enables two pieces of hardware to effectively communicate. They both have the ability to send and then receive and decipher, to let's say, like, not exactly encrypt, but I'm just going to use that word loosely, to encrypt and send, and then also to receive and decrypt. That's the very, very imprecise word version. I know anyone who's an expert in computer engineering is going to come in and say, what, it's not encrypting. And you're right. And at the same time, you also know what I mean. So there's the sense of packaging and sending, but then we get to step 2 of review, which is that once the message is sent with the ones and zeros, that driver, that's only for that device. If you have a different device, like your mouse for your keyboard, for your computer rather, you have the keyboard for the computer and you have the mouse for the computer. The mouse also, that's a different device entirely. It can't use the driver for the keyboard. That makes sense. That's straightforward. But the insight that I am suggesting has a translation for human communication is as follows. That because the mouse has a different driver, that means it could reuse the sets of ones and zeros that the keyboard uses. And I use reuse, maybe isn't the right word. It could also use. So what I mean is, you do, let's say, a left click on your mouse, and that has to send some ones and zeros to the computer. What ones and zeros is it going to send? Well, let's say it sends 1100. Let's say, I'm making that one up. Let's just say that's what it is. You left click 1100. Nice. And by virtue of the driver, the computer now on the receiving end can say, oh yeah, 1100, that's the mouse. Yes, that was a left click. I am so thrilled to have this experience. And then you can also apply it in the other direction with the keyboard. If you say, when you type J-O, you type out the name John Smith, maybe, just for the sake of discussion, the J, what set of ones and zeros does that send? Well, maybe it also sends 1100. And so it sends 1100 as the keyboard. The computer now receiving the signal says, oh, this is so dope. I got something from the keyboard and it's 1100. And that means the letter J. The user pressed the letter J. All right, nice, I'm with it. The insight I'm drawing is, notice how the two different devices are sending the exact same signal. They both sent 1100. They both send the same signal, but the only reason the computer interpreted them differently is by virtue of this thing called a driver, where it determines how to oh, that's like from the keyboard. Oh, that's the letter J. Oh, this other thing, 1100. Oh, wait, that's from the mouse. That's the left click. So the driver indicates that the signal itself, the 1100, that does not have meaning. The signal doesn't have meaning. You're not, in fact, like sending a packet of left clickfulness. Like, that's not what's happening. Oh yes, I clicked the left clicker, or what is it? The left button? I don't know. The left click on my mouse. It sends a little elf through the cable, and it's holding a sign that says left click. Nope, that's not what happens. It sends a vague signal that could be interpreted in an unlimited number of ways. But then the receiver has the driver, and the driver is where the meaning is. It's almost as if the signal, listen to my very crude metaphor here. It's almost as if the signal tickles the receiving driver. The sending device knows what to send in order to indicate that it's a left click from the mouse. And on the receiving end, it's almost as if the signal knows how to precisely, hold my fingers just like this, and then precisely how to tickle the receiving end so that it knows, oh, that means left click. But it's the drivers on either end. That's where the meaning is. The signal is an arbitrary, ambiguous, just signal without meaning. This is like a core Buddhism thing, even though I'm talking about it from a computer engineering perspective. I see Since Samurai is with us, which is really good. That's really good. T-Sav is with us here. T-Sav says things do have meaning. What has meaning? The signal? In computer engineering, it doesn't. Now, you might say that I'm going too far by making it into an analogy for human communication. But I didn't get that far yet. Right now, I'm just talking about computer engineering. A set of ones and zeros doesn't mean anything without a driver. You need the driver. Warhart says he needs to upgrade his operating system. Maybe. In any case, so there's the concept of drivers. That's review point number, 1 and 2, did I say? And then I make the gigantic leap to say that something like that is at least partially true when it comes to human communication. Now, we send to each other, we send signals that are more complicated than ones and zeros. Now, ultimately, you know, or you may know, that it does get translated into electrical signals to your nervous system to get processed by your brain. So there is still an element of that, regardless of which sense we're talking about. If we're talking about your sense of smell, or your sense of hearing, or your sense of vision, or your sense of touch, whichever sense we're talking about, it does ultimately get translated into electrical signals for your nervous system, which is a bunch of ones and zeros also. But that's not where I'm necessarily going right now. I'm not necessarily going into that. Just talking about human communication as we think about it. And I suggested, and I still continue to suggest, that the way these drivers are formed, could be through a multitude of, methods. I'm talking about human communication now. I see Since Samurai say, this is wild, man, I dig. Good, I'm glad you like that, man. I'm glad of it. And in the case of humans, the drivers being, I guess let's complete the metaphor a little bit before I go any deeper into where it comes from. But in the case of drawing a metaphor to human communication, any two people, miscommunications exist. If when you speak to someone, you were actually sending like a little elf with a sign, there was actually a message in what you express, if that were true, then miscommunications would happen precisely 0% of the time. In the same way that if you need to hand something to someone, you're like, here's this object, I'm going to hand this object to someone, and the person receives it. It's not like, some portion of the time, 3% of the time or something, when I hand them this pen, they actually receive a spoon. Like that happens exactly 0% of the time. And the reason is there is an object that is being transmitted through space and being received. That's why that happens with physical objects. My my very wild assertion is that with communication it's not like that. It's not that you are sending a message and here it is, you can hold some message in your hand and it occupies space. Here I'm going to send a message and then the message gets received by the other person. There is no message. There is only sending um, ambiguous signals that the other person needs to interpret. Like the signals that we send each other, just from a pure physics perspective, the signals that we send each other through our different senses and such, speaking and hearing, making some kind of visual and seeing it, whatever information we send between each other, that, as I say, is more complicated than just ones and zeros. But it's as meaningless as if you were to watch, some foreign species communicate, like not even humans. Like you watch some birds or something, and they're just to you, they're just like making what is this chaotic chirping they're doing? This doesn't mean anything. Well, yeah, to us, because we don't have the drivers to understand what the birds are saying to each other. So there is some manner of driver that is happening, but it doesn't seem like total meaninglessness to you because you understand the language I'm speaking. And the language I'm speaking, I'm sending, we have enough of an agreement between us about what all those words mean and everything that communication can transpire. But where did that agreement come from? Like, how do we both have an agreement about what these words mean? Where did that come from? How did I know how to say stuff? How did I know how to vibrate my vocal cords and my lips and tongue and everything and make sounds in a way that you will receive, and then I'll have confidence that you received and understood the thing that I said? Like, where on earth do I get such audacity to think that I can say stuff and you'll understand it? It comes from drivers. And this idea of drivers is that it's not inherently biologically hardwired. If it were, then you would understand every single language that all humans speak. I don't know what languages you speak. I speak English. I have a little bit of Spanish that I have some confidence with. I've studied German a little bit. I currently study Hebrew, biblical Hebrew to be more accurate. And that's it. I don't speak Portuguese. I don't speak French. I don't speak Greek. I don't speak Japanese. I don't speak Swahili. There's so many languages I don't speak. Why don't I speak them? It's because it's not physiologically in my brain. It's not, these drivers are not hardwired. They're not biological. But instead, they are absorbed from your environment. And this is my next level of review from the previous streams. Next level of review. Where do these drivers come from? Well, in a way that is, let's say, an analogous extension of how humans absorb their native language. Something like that is true for the rest of the layers of drivers, these interpretive layers. How do I know what this signal is that you're sending me? So your primary natural language comes from just being immersed in it at a very impressionable age. You were born and then time started to pass and you were constantly hearing all sorts of sounds like all the time from people, and your very extraordinarily brilliant brain was able to detect in those sounds, it was able to detect that there were some patterns, and even different people talking with different sounds, there was patterns. They seemed to be pronouncing sounds in certain ways. And after however many months or however long it is that you learn how to understand language, you start to understand things because you're constantly immersed in it all the time. So that's how you acquire your natural language. It just imprints on you. You're constantly immersed in it, and you notice patterns. You notice signals amidst the chaos. You notice that there are consistent, discernible patterns and signals. And that is where you extract your natural language from. Your ability to recognize those patterns. Something similar extends, as I repeatedly come back to, something similar extends to just the rest of how you interpret things. What does it mean that that person, waved at you? What does it mean that that person had that facial expression? What does it mean that those people over there are walking in that direction holding that object? What do these things mean? What does it mean that you're driving on the road and you see there are lines painted on the road? Like, what do those things mean? Somehow you got those things. And while some of it comes from, well, I'm not even going to go into what some of it comes from, but I am going to go into my list here. I listed out 5 things that I said in the previous streams. But before I get there, I see Jack has added a chat. Let's see what's happening right here. And this is good because, as I say, this discussion stream and these discussion streams, as I continue to experiment with this medium, these are meant to be more of a discussion than a lecture. I do have some bullets that I'm going to bring us back to, but it is meant to be a platform for you to discuss. So let's see again. What is Jack saying right here? Jack is talking about intrinsic motivators and using extrinsic motivators for general advantage. Yeah, what are people motivated by in terms of themselves, their own, because they just want to do it, versus, and that's intrinsic motivators, by the way, versus extrinsic motivators being like, money or something. I'll do it for that thing over there, the privilege of having something, whatever it might be. I'm still just checking out the chat here. Sin Samurai says the discussion stream is a good addition to the library of Reconsider It live streams. That's good. I'm glad you like it. So let's continue with the drivers discussion. Like, we left off at the point of drivers being an interpretive framework for knowing what things mean, whether that's literally words someone is saying at you in some language, or if it's more general, like, how do I interpret this? What was the meaning of that? And so on. What was the significance of that, cultural event? So where do these drivers come from? They come from being immersed, and that was what I linked to, just language, but also immersed in let's say, like in a grade school where you're among a few dozen at least of your peers who are your age, and you all kind of see what is happening with whoever, and you might pick up from that setting, here's what it means when people do this. Or you have this kind of experience or exchange with someone, and you said, when I have that kind of exchange, it's going to go this way. You learn from your experiences. So this is one way that I'm saying drivers are formed. You just learn your life lessons through what you live. And this already brings a lot of divergence in it. You could use a word other than divergence here, because there's probably more than just 2 ways that it branches for people. If you get any 2 people, they do not have the same set of life experiences and lessons learned, and the same set of, let's say, self-esteem by which to continue participating in further life experiences. And so their paths can diverge even further. But that's one layer of the drivers, these interpretive framework for knowing what a situation means and what move should I make next. It comes from just your life lessons, your experiences. Okay, cool. That's one. That's one bullet point. Another one, as I have in my list here and mentioned on previous streams, is the idea of something you might formally study on a conscious level. And that would be, like I was saying earlier, if you're driving and there's lines on the road, what do they mean? Well, at some point, either someone told you what that means, or you had a driver's manual and you looked it up. You said, oh, okay, means that. Cool, that's good. So things that you study and learn, like you might know how to do some kind of, let's say, math operations, depending on what level of math you took in your grade school experience or even higher education experience. You might be able to do something like addition. Maybe you can add two numbers, or you might be able to subtract numbers. And that's not something that you just were instantly born with, and it just happened, and you knew how to subtract and add numbers. No, you learn that. For some people, it comes very naturally. For other people, they have to work at it. But these are the things that you can learn and become second nature through some kind of conscious effort, some kind of conscious attention that you're trying to learn. That's another avenue through which a person's interpretive framework and drivers can be imprinted upon them and inform how they interpret things. If you had a very difficult time with math, then if somebody gave you some kind of thing to do that required math, you might have anxiety about it. And you might feel like, oh, I got to deal with this. Whereas somebody else, somebody who had an easy time with math, always came naturally to them, they get that same exact thing, but they interpret it not as some kind of stress. They interpret it as, oh, here's, some kind of thing I can do pretty quickly and be done with it, or maybe I'll enjoy it. Maybe it's like a little puzzle or something. It's the same exact thing, but the two different people see something different. It's two movies on one screen. It's the exact same, thing that requires math skills. One person looks at it and it's a source of anxiety. The other person looks at it and it's just like a perfectly neutral thing that will be easy for them. Why do they feel differently about it? They're looking at the same thing. It's because they have had different experiences, and those experiences inform how they interpret the thing. So we have this phenomenon of two movies on one screen. Informed by personal experiences, informed by what you put conscious effort into learning. Also, whatever you might consume as a cultural thing, movie, or if not movies, then books you might read, or podcasts, or any such business, or music, anything like that. Just cultural downloading, or whatever word I might come up with for that. Sort of a cultural absorption. That's another way that your drivers get informed. How do you make sense of something? The way that you watch, if you watch a bunch of movies that are, I don't know, depressing and hopeless, you're going to come out of them feeling pretty depressed and hopeless. It informs how you interpret things. Everything becomes like this compounding layering that is constantly pulling out what seems to be the common thread. Another one, and this is the one that I was going to bring today as a new topic, is social media. And social media is a new phenomenon in human history. What's it? It's 2025 right now. How long has social media been around? What, like 20 years? I know that, what was it? Oh my goodness, MySpace. Was MySpace the first social media that most people were on? I don't know when that was. Was that like the year 2000 or something? I don't even remember. Something like 20 years or so. 15, 20 years? That's how long social media's been around? It's relatively new. But man, that is no joke. That is no joke how it directly programs people. Think of how I'm talking about think of how I'm talking about drivers as being absorbed experiences where your nervous system receives these ones and zeros through your various sense organs, through your sense of smell, through your sense of hearing, through your sense of vision, through your sense of touch. Your nervous system is just like constantly 24/7 receiving all of these electrical signals about what's happening in your local environment. And all of those electrical signals are just constantly being compounded. And for most of human history, there has not been such such like intense changing of what your senses are experiencing on like a second to second basis. For most of human history, it was like you would be perhaps working the fields in order to, get some food, or you would be perhaps doing some kind of study or relaxation in your domicile. But for most of human history, it's just kind of like, okay, we're hanging out in this spot for however many hours. A little over 100 years ago, we started to get things like cars, so that now you're moving through space at a faster rate and your sense organs are processing more at a faster rate. And so that has begun to encroach upon the human nervous system a bit, because that's more and more and more um, strained. It's like dialing up what we have to be processing and handling on a conscious level. And that was just literally having a car and moving through space time such that you are traversing more space in a lesser time. And that's just literally like your eyeballs are processing more changes in photons as compared to most of human history. And that was just driving through a car. Okay, we're going 25 miles an hour in back in 1920 or whatever it was. Nowadays, not only do we have faster cars and airplanes and like humans are just processing so much all the time, not only is that true, but also now there's social media, which ultimately is where we're going in this stream here. Social media is so much, there's so much that you get as you scroll. Even if we talk about how like however many decades it's been, if we stop at like the year 2000, from what, like 1950 to the year 2000, let's say, that's roughly when the human species has had this phenomenon of movies, films. Let's say roughly 1950 to 2000. I know it's not exactly that, but let's say roughly 50 years or so. That was a span of time in which humans had the opportunity to a movie, watch a movie, and thereby like ingest another life experience that they're not having of their own. And so the ability to watch a movie or read a book or anything like this, that goes in the category of the cultural products that I was talking about earlier. But with social media, there's something different. It's it's not exactly like that. It's not just, all right, I'm going to invest 2 hours in this movie in order to download this alternate dimensional life experience from someone else's set of eyes. Here, let me watch this other movie. Oh, what a good movie. Now I have another lens through which to interpret my experiences here in this three-dimensional universe. Or I'm going to invest a couple of hours to read a book, whatever the case is. Social media is different. Social media is different. Jack agrees, though, that having a printing press was massive. Yeah, the amount of dissemination of knowledge just by being able to print stuff, that's no joke. Social media, though, that also is no joke. Because there's just so much that goes by so fast. And that's giving you so many impressions. The most successful content, as you know, the most successful content on social media is content that is easily consumed quickly. Now, that might be some kind of quick one sentence thing that's somehow hilarious or inflammatory in some way, but something that like carries a lot of meaning fast. And here's this one sentence. Here's a screenshot of a tweet, whatever the case may be. Or maybe it's an image, a meme, a quick meme. Like you don't need many seconds. You scroll to the thing. Well, I got it in 2 seconds, and I'm still scrolling. 2 seconds. So you're getting all of this meaning, so much meaning, very fast. And so that's one way that social media is just like this entirely new frontier of stimulation, which in my framework here in these communication streams, these live streams, this informs your drivers. And this further diverges each individual. So before we were talking about how any two individuals will have different sets of life experiences, they'll learn different lessons, they develop different personalities, they have different assumptions about what is and what is not within reach for them, all of this. And that's been all of human history. But now with social media, it's like it's getting really exaggerated, much, much more exaggerated. The differences between people, the differences between perceptions of things, the differences between the way people interpret things, because their drivers are being informed differently by very radically different streams of what they see on their Instagram or Facebook or YouTube streams, whatever they get. That's very tailored by what their previous experience on that platform has been. P.S. Also things from not on that platform. But whatever they are seeing, it's like it's what do they call it? A self-fulfilling prophecy? Is that the term? Where the more you fixate on something, the more you dive into something, you get this like swirling, deepening, and you suddenly have this like a more extreme view, more extreme perception. You have more in the case of social media, those generally, as you know, are tuned around what's going to be excitatory, like what's going to make you have what's going to make you have some kind of reaction like that. That gets the most promotion through social media algorithms. And my question, my wondering is how, like, what are the lessons to be learned from that, and how quickly can humanity make those pivots, make any pivots that are needed? Because based on how things go in the past however many years, and this is October 2025 as I record this. October what? 2nd? October 2nd, 2025 as I record this. Things get like really intense on a social or cultural level in the past however many years, 5, 10 years. Seems like things are getting more and more escalated. And to me, it's a very clear straight line that correlates with social media and what people see. Because how else are you going to have people have such divergent views, social views? How are you going to have such divergence that we observe? Their drivers are being somehow, put into a divergence. It seems to me like social media is a very clear, I guess, accusee. I was going to say culprit, but we would have to have a thorough investigation before we make such accusations. So the accusee seems like social media might be in some way related. But while I talk about all this, I see Jack has a cue. A cue. Jack says, how does the mood of the speaker or the listener affect communication? Can the presenter change the mood? So going back to the topic of communication in general. Yeah. The reason that it's useful to know about drivers is to facilitate your successful sending of signals. That's why I bring all of this up for you. It's to it's to empower you to have at least some more, like another lens through which to interpret how to communicate at the very minimum. But as I promised earlier, also some actionable things you can do. Future Embassy is with us as well. Q for Jack, though. How does the mood affect communication? Yeah, so the reason that I talk about drivers is that it enables you to communicate more effectively, because in order to communicate more effectively, you can't send the signals you want to send because they're, the message you want to send and the way you want to send it. That won't be communication. That'll be more like expression, which is also good. And there's a place for that as well. But the subject we're talking about at the moment is communication. So communication requires that you send the signal that the other person can easily interpret. So you speak using their receiving driver, not what you want to send, your sending driver, or however you would phrase that. Jack says stretching the vowels changes his mood. That's good. Good. That's good. I'm glad. So we have the driver's topic. I got distracted briefly. But the topic of the mood now, that's what Jack is asking about. That's why I was building up to this. So your mood sending versus what will they receive, their mood receiving. And Jack is asking, can the presenter change the mood? How does the mood of the speaker or the listener affect communication? The more as the speaker that you know the other person's mood, the more you can fit into it. So I would say that the primary relevant factor there is the listener's mood. And then secondary to that is how the speaker communicates it. But for the listener's mood, if the person, for example, is, depressed, then if you're the speaker and you're speaking to someone who is in that sort of down mood, well, then you would know that it's probable, not certain, it's probable that they will have, let's say, a more pessimistic interpretation of what you say. And so, therefore, you as the speaker would need to be sure to be extra, either, depending on the individual you're speaking to, either more positive or more reassuring, or just repeat and be patient. Depends on exactly the individual, what they're receptive to. But you'd be leaning harder into affirming, let's say, the positivity or the upward hopefulness or something, if the listener was in a saddened or depressed mood. Whereas if you have the exact same person who was in a different mood, let's say they were in an inspired, confident mood and they felt energetic, in that situation, well, you won't need to do any kind of like reassuring or helping them lift their spirits. So you can just really cut to the chase. You could probably have fun with them a little bit and they'll enjoy that and they'll feed into it, which will make them more receptive. So you joining with them in some experience like that will make them more receptive. So those are two extreme examples of how the listener's receiving mood will impact the communication you're having. You can imagine along the continuum there are different degrees of this and that variable, but it remains in the same principle framework of just saying you have to be speaking what the other person is ready to receive. That's all that is. So that's pretty good. I'm a fan of that. So with social media, I mentioned that social media was providing a lot of stimulation quickly in a way that exceeds what, the human species has ever really processed. We've not really, as a species, had so much. Here, let me scroll through Instagram for an hour. Let me scroll through Instagram for 3 hours. Anything like this. People have not had that level of stimulation in human history. So this overstimulates the individual, the person, you, me, the person opening their YouTube stream or their Facebook stream or whatever social media you use. And not only does it overwhelm you, but then there is the secondary feature of the algorithm as it's tailored for you, as I mentioned earlier. Right now, I'm just calling that out as a second factor. There's the quantity of stimulation, that's one factor. And then there is the fact that it gets more and more and more intensified and more extreme. The more you use the platform, the more it tailors to what you have previously used it for. So it's this like self-reinforcing rabbit hole, your own personal algorithm on Instagram or YouTube or whatever platform we're talking about, whatever platform you use. So those two factors make social media into something unprecedented in human history. And that's my point there, period. The first point in that list, that social media is a lot fast, that ties into the other half of the name of this stream. We're talking about social media, but also mental shelf space. So shelf space. Social media overwhelms your shelf space. And by overwhelming your shelf space, it makes you, I don't want to use a word like docile, but it numbs your critical gatekeeping. It numbs that a bit. And so you get more and more comfortable, more and more receptive, because there's just so much so fast, beyond anything that the human species really has had to deal with in human history. And this mental shelf space that social media overwhelms, this mental shelf space of yours, that's a general principle that we can extract for the larger discussion around communication and influence. Because we talk a lot about the drivers and how this interpretive framework is different for everybody. And here's the tip to practice. If you want to communicate effectively with somebody, you have to use their interpretation of things. You can't say like you want to be right about what this means or that. You have to just speak in terms of what they're ready to hear. What are they able to understand? That's how communication is best facilitated. So that there's that topic of the drivers. We talked about social media also as being, a means of programming drivers at a rate that exceeds anything in human history. But specifically, why is this idea of shelf space? That's what has never really been quite overridden at this rate. You have a limited shelf space, as do I, as does everyone. It's like a normal part of human psychology and neurology, even. If you look up the magic number 7, if you Google that or use your favorite AI for that, the magic number 7. If you've heard of that, you'll see that there's a approximate amount of concrete things that humans can deal with on a conscious level while still remaining engaged with their environment, without having to like withdraw and start abstracting or start making decisions. Just what can you remain engaged with? And it turns out it's roughly 7-ish, plus or minus whatever, plus or minus 1 or 2. Roughly 7 things. And that's why, by the way, most countries, or at least many, maybe it's not most, but many countries, phone numbers are 7 digits, 8 digits, 6 digits. It's because of this. It's because humans can deal with about that many things at once. Okay, your number is, eight, 6 3 5091. There you go. There's your phone number. Okay, a human can remember that. You don't have a phone number that's like 30 digits long. That is not where phone numbers came from when they were first invented. It's just about how much people can juggle and deal with and memorize. So that's good. That's good. We have this idea of a concrete limitation, a bandwidth of shelf space that you have in order to process what's happening in your local environment in real time. I promised you also earlier that I would give you a suggestion on how to use this concept of shelf space for your advantage. I already talked about how social media overwhelms your shelf space, and by doing so, it makes you increasingly docile. Getting constantly overwhelmed all the time makes you trust it, makes you not question it. So that level of overwhelm is like a hijacking of your shelf space, of your limited bandwidth. But something similar is true that you can use on the other side positively, as something you use to your advantage for your mental health purposes, and that is for you to control what you put on your shelf, so to speak. You have very, very high degree of control over what you experience through your senses. I'm open to limitations and saying, well, I don't have control over this. And I'm cool with that. But you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean. You have a lot of influence over what you let into your life, over what you let into your mind. You can choose to put XYZ into your life or your mind or whatever in order to occupy your limited shelf space. The more you think about something, the more it impacts you and the more it informs your drivers. So, for example, if you have, let's say, a genuinely difficult experience, you have a genuinely even traumatic experience, not trying to sweep it under the rug. It's actually a real thing. You really had a bad experience. We don't have to analyze it too deeply with drivers. It was pretty bad. How about that? We'll start there. It was a bad experience. Let's say that happened. You have a large degree of control over how you interpret it, especially as it gets further into the past. The further it gets into the past, the more control you have over what it means to you and how you let it affect you. So, for example, if you were to take that genuinely bad experience that nobody is arguing whether it's good or bad, it was just a genuinely bad experience. In the following hours, days, months, you could take one of two paths. You could take one of two paths. You could dwell on the damage that was done, or you could accept whatever damage was done and grieve it, and then occupy your time with what you yet have available moving forward. So those are the two basic extremes of what you might choose to do on a conscious level. Do you prefer to dwell? Do you prefer to take advantage of what yet remains available? Both are possible. But these are pretty divergent paths in terms of how you're influencing your future self, how you're setting yourself up to view your future. What is possible for you now? The more you dwell, the more that you will feel that it is inevitable to repeat the more that you try to do what you can with whatever you have, the more that you will feel that things are possible because you're slowly doing things, but also because you're occupying your thoughts with what is possible. You're occupying your thoughts with what you can do, what you can develop. That's the subject. That's what's going through your mind. This is the topic that we're talking about here of shelf space. You have the ability to manage your shelf space, to manage what you subject yourself to. What do you subject yourself to? You have the ability to set yourself up with the greatest amount of possibility, or you can set yourself up to have the greatest amount of repetition of what you've previously had. So these are two basic paths, and whichever path you take, you take different paths at different points in your life in different contexts and all this. But the tip for you that this live stream is essentially building up to, this is kind of it right now, is to intentionally put things into your limited mental shelf space that benefit you, to intentionally benefit yourself. As I sneeze, which is good. If you'd like to sneeze as well, that works. That is a good thing, and you are doing yourself a favor by sneezing. So that's it. That's it, my friends. That's the tip I had for you after a recap of the previous point of drivers, and also a bit of a discussion around social media, the way social media is unprecedented in human history as a means of forming these drivers in people, in the way that it forms my drivers. And what I look at on Instagram, I'm watching people like draw, handmade little like designs and things and color it with highlighters. I like that kind of stuff. There's one page that I like today called Brain Massage with 3 S's. Massage with 3 S's. Brain Massage. That's a good page. I like that one. But what we see on social media is just, it gives us more stimulation at a faster rate than we've ever had in human history. And I assert that it deserves its own category here of things that inform a person's perceptual framework, the layers of interpretive meaning that they use every time they see a new thing. They see a new outrageous thing in social media, and how do they interpret it? What does it mean? What does this portend for the future? The way you interpret that largely comes from the highly intense training that you get from seeing one thing after another. That's another element of social media. If you're scrolling through, let's say, Instagram, I keep saying that. Instagram is the primary social media I use. I don't really use any other social medias. I use YouTube, but I use that for creating videos. Instagram is the one that I consume posts, YouTube, I leave YouTube comments and watch YouTube videos. It's a different experience on Instagram, though, for me anyway, of scrolling quickly. I don't scroll quickly on YouTube, that's what I'm saying. I scroll quickly on Instagram. So yeah, it's only one thing at a time. Maybe 2, fit 2 things on a screen. But it's basically one thing at a time. It's as if you're scrolling past, traditional film. Film used to literally be one frame after another that was very slightly different. And as you go through them quickly, it appears to be a consistent movie. So social media is doing something like that for your subconscious mind, where you see one thing at a time. Oh, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this, on all sorts of whatever topics. Your brain is still assembling it into one movie. And it gets more and more and more intensified the more you interact with it. The more that you like a post, that platform is going to give you more things that's similar to that. The more that you comment on something, the more you're going to get things that are similar to that. The more that you just stop and watch that video, even if you don't like it or anything, the more you're going to get stuff like that. Whatever it is, it just gets more and more and more and more intensified. Again, this is why social media is different, and that's why it was part of the discussion here tonight. And then there was the final element that we talked about here of shelf space, because that's the other way that social media is deceptive in how it programs people. Just straight up, it's very easy to have discussions about how it's effectively mind control on a level that we've never really contended with in human history. TV in the past however many decades was the initial stomping ground for mind control efforts. Not that everything on TV was mind control, but more than zero of it was. Similarly, social media has that too. And it's way more intense. It's way more intense now than it's ever been. The other reason that social media is so intense, as I said earlier today, just recapping here as we're winding down and closing down the stream. Let me know in the chat, by the way, any outstanding thoughts you have about any of these topics, about communication and where these drivers come from, the fact that you need to speak another person's terms, not what you want to say. You have to enunciate what they will hear. The other reason that social media was very persuasive that I asserted today is that social media overwhelms you. It's not just that it's a lot fast, it's that it overwhelms you. That's a categorically different thing that social media is doing. It overwhelms your limited shelf space. You can only think about so many things at a time, at any given instant, at any given passing nanosecond. You can only be thinking or experiencing so many things at once, or juggling so many things at once. If it's only one thing at a given, nanosecond. You're juggling a few things at any given time. You could be juggling up to a few things, but that's it, just a few things. You can't juggle 49 things at once. That's not a thing. But even though this limitation of yours is hijackable, it can be hijacked by something like social media, because you have limited bandwidth, because you have limited capacity to focus on any one thing at a time. And me too. This is native to humans. This is neurological to humans. This is native to all humans. Because you can be overwhelmed, and that's unfortunate that it can be abused like that. What I'm bringing to you is the hope now that you can say, oh, look, wait, I do have this limitation. I can use this limitation to my advantage. And now you can just decide what you consume. What do you consume on social media? Do you stop social media and then go, read a book or watch a video that will not like inflame your anger like some social media can, but a video that is enriching in some way? Maybe you learn a skill. Maybe you go do something physical or active, so that what you're focused on is what you're doing physically actively and not the thing that, you didn't want to think about. That's how you use the shelf space to your advantage, is that you choose what to spend your every passing second. What are you spending, putting as input to yourself? Are you reading something constructive? Are you learning something? Are you getting physical activity? A lot of times all you need to do is go for a walk or just get your heart rate up a little bit in order to process things effectively. So your limited shelf space, that's a pretty big advantage that you have, that you can use to your advantage, and then benefit from that. For some of you who are watching this and engaging with us right now, that sounds familiar. And you use that shelf space strategy, and you intentionally occupy your mind with productive things, or if not productive, then at least harmonic, things that are good for you, healthy things. And you already use this strategy, and you're like, yeah, he's not kidding. Please like this video. Also, for some of you watching, this is something that makes sense for you, and you say, this is something I think I can apply and use. And it sounds like some other people are already using it. That's pretty useful stuff. So for some of you, this just solved a pretty significant problem for you. This just gave you a very, very significant life advantage. And that's exactly the kind of content that I'm providing for you here on these discussion streams. I see that Dragon Sail is in the place. Yes, yeah, my dude. My man is with us. I see Jack also is adding a comment regarding communication. And by the way, my friends, because I've just now given you the recap, I have effectively concluded my content for the stream. This is a great time for any other follow-ups you have, or any, if you want to randomly go into other topics too, we could also do that. But Jack says we have this principle here: tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, then tell them what you told them. Yes, exactly. Jack is nailing the. Here, can I give you a? What do they call this emoji on YouTube? Oh, there it is. Good. Here you go, Jack. I'm giving you one of these. That's pretty good. Pretty good emoji. Warheart says, my wife and I use different drivers. Wah, wah. Yeah, maybe there's some way that this insight can help resolve, um, partner conflicts, because it is helpful. I mean, for real, it's helpful. I I I use this technique myself, and I have in the past, of just understanding, like, if you have a conflict with someone, such as your wife or whoever it may be, you have a conflict. The way through that, if you wish to continue having that relationship, the way through that is not to seek your personal expression. That's not the way you navigate that, but rather to communicate with what your partner is ready to hear or is capable of hearing. And that can change, as we were talking earlier, based on mood. Jack was talking about that earlier, based on mood. Yeah. If you guys are having a fight, then it can be very helpful to remember. It's like, all right, there's a very limited set of things that my wife here is going to be ready to hear. Now, of course, you don't want to develop a complex about that. You don't want to get some kind of paralysis where you're like, oh no, I don't know I don't know what's going to be acceptable. I experienced that. That's a phenomenon I experience. Is getting sort of laser focused. Laser focused, like, oh, I gotta navigate this very fine line of like, in this particular context, what exactly is this person receptive to? So it is possible to go overboard with it. I experience that sometimes. Jack says he smiles brightly at the fact that I gave him this very wonderful emoji in the chat. That's good. That's good. I like that a lot. That's very nice. By the way, as another reminder of the tips from the previous stream, I mentioned that there are 3 basic ways to captivate someone's attention. Somebody who is through their basic maturity phases, somebody who's like in their, late adolescence and older, young adulthood and older, anyone in that age range, part of what's happening with them all the time is that they're exercising their autonomy. That begins to develop roughly adolescence-ish. And then as they get older, a person developmentally just has, a lot of autonomy most of the time. Most people most of the time are experiencing this like thing called self that they feel autonomous with. And so in some way you have to respect their autonomy while also framing what you say to catch their attention. The respecting of their autonomy is effectively just like this principle of drivers saying, I'm going to speak in terms you're ready to hear. I'm speaking in terms you would be receptive to. Like, you have to be this like humble servant before someone in order for them to consider listening to what you have to say. And so I mentioned in the previous stream that there are three basic things that catch a person's attention and make them want to say, all right, I have this limited capacity for attention, but I'm going to give some of it to you right now. I'm in the driver's seat of my life. I'm autonomous, but I will decide to pay attention to this. There are three basic categories of things that catch someone's attention, and they are the following. If you talk about it as empowering, you're trying to tell them something, and you tell them how it's going to, enable them to do this, or they're going to be more able to do that, or this is going to be easier for them, or something like this. You're empowering them in some way. People listen to that. They like feeling empowered, people in general. That's an easy way to get through to people, to convince them that you're empowering them. Another way is to frame what you're trying to send them, the package you're trying to send them, to frame it as pleasure. You're going to love this. You're going to like this. This is going to feel so good. This is going to feel so satisfying. Think of how great this is going to feel. You're going to love knowing this, whatever it is. This is pleasure-based packaging. And the final of the three is that you're offering them a productive strategy for avoiding something unpleasant, some kind of pain or something they would fear, or something that would be just arduous or boring or whatever it might be. You're offering them some kind of strategy to avoid that difficulty or pain. They'll listen to that too. People don't like dealing with pain. They're like, oh, you're telling me I don't have to have this pain? I'm with it. Please tell me more. I'm giving you my attention. So that's a brief reminder as well of content from previous streams. Brief summary. And my friends, that is the discussion stream for today. Hooray! What a great experience this has been. This is so good. You got productive content. You got things you can experiment with and use to your advantage. Manage your own shelf space, because you can only process so many things at a time. And what you process in an ongoing manner becomes what informs your perception of things. And you have control of this, the mental shelf space. That's good. We had a fun discussion about social media and why it's different from anything we've had in human history before. Whoa, it's overwhelming your shelf space, and it's a lot. P.S. We have to deal with highly competent entities that know how to influence, that have a presence on social media. That's also unprecedented in human history. And we also had a nice review of the drivers and some suggestions of where they come from, your own personal life experiences, your own personal life lessons, your things you've formally studied through some kind of education or concentration, and any kind of cultural whatevers that you have consumed, movies, books, and then now we also have social media. I see Jack says, thanks. This is worth learning about. That's good. It's very beneficial for you. I'll be interested in hearing how you try to experiment with some of these techniques and tips I give you, and see how it applies and where you find success with these things. If you run into a wall, we could talk about that stuff too. Dragon Sail says, I love hearing you talk your philosopher talk, bro. That's good. I enjoy it. I intend to continue experimenting with these discussion streams. I continue to look for your feedback on what is useful, what's helpful, what sorts of things would you want more of? What would make you say that you want to join again for the next discussion stream? Do you want these to be even more discussion based? I'm looking for your feedback on that, because this is still an experiment. This is the third episode. That's good stuff, my friends. There will continue to be these discussion streams. I'm planning to do at least once a week-ish, plus or minus, roughly. The music streams continue. You can keep looking forward to tinkering in the studio streams, where I play on the loopers and the synth and talk to you about stuff. Maybe this subject matter will start getting integrated into those music streams, ? The instrumental streams called Unspoken, those are still coming. You're going to have all the music streams, but now we're also going to have these discussion streams. Keep letting me know what's beneficial for you. And until then, my friends, please, 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 please have a very good rest of your day today. Please have a very excellent and amazing and uplifting rest of your day today. Please experience all manner of goodness and blessing today. And I will see you in the next Reconsider It live stream.